This is your City Council Roundup, a recap of what's happening at City Hall with John Ongaro. The views expressed in this program are solely of those of the host and not necessarily those of the radio station or its partners.
All right. Away we go.
It's a late night. And there was a lot going on.
Not really. There were only 2 items.
Well, for multitasking, I'm saying.
Sure.
Yes.
Yep. Meeting was on time last night, just after 6:30, and away we went. The very first thing on the agenda, Councillor Trevor Gatuga immediately bringing forward a motion to change the agenda. Smart move to move the temporary village discussion up to the beginning of the meeting because of the time that would be required. He called it. They needed time, all right, and that was approved. And away we went. The agenda change in the temporary village was first last night at 6:40. The temporary village is a difficult file and a big decision that, to be honest, with all of the flip-flopping they've done about this file in the last couple of weeks, there's no way of telling where this was going to go last night. But at the end of the day, this is about people, about caring for people, about doing what's right. You either do something to help or you do nothing and sit on the sidelines and complain about the social issues we have in the community like we're the only community that's suffering through it. We're not. There is no in-between with this file. Either way, people on both sides won't be happy. And either way, it was shown last night that your city council has a terrible time making tough decisions. And instead of doing their homework to make informed decisions, they use council meetings to repeat themselves, pontificate, and rehash issues over and over again, accomplishing absolutely nothing for countless hours. That's exactly what happened last night for 6 hours. Now, please remember that your council voted long ago that the city of Thunder Bay was going to take a human rights approach to supporting those in need and those that require care. That led to a 10-point plan that included a designated encampment space around the city and also included a temporary village. That was part of the plan. And moreover, it's the human rights approach that they approved that got us here. The City of Thunder Bay administration recommended Cam River Heritage Park as the site for the temporary village initiative again last night. The recommendation follows a comparative analysis of 2 potential locations of the Cam River Park and Fort William Road. You know the story. The analysis considered various factors, feedback from community, etc., etc. The Cam River Park price tag, about $5.5 million. Only $5 million is approved in the plan, so we're a little over. It's a little higher than Fort William Road, which came in at $5 million for somewhere between 80 and 100 units. The report argues, though, that the Cam River's operational and strategic advantages are more significant, and the financial feasibility of the recommended site is enhanced by $2.8 million from the government. Secured funding that they need to get their hands on, but only had until last night to do it. So why Cam Park? Well, it's municipally owned. That's a highlighted factor that will expedite the process by avoiding lease negotiations and third-party approvals. And that site is already in a close proximity to a wide range of essential support services, a major public transit hub, and more. The report also notes that the site is already an established encampment location, offering continuity for prospective residents and more. They did their homework. So away we went on to the first of 2 deputations last night. The first deputant, former councillor Aldo Roberto, who used his time to represent the Fort William BIA. He had 10 minutes, and it was no surprise. He delivered one complaint after another. The former councillor sounded like the old days when he used to hold court in council chambers, and then went on to complain that he's had to present to council 3 times and nobody's listening to him. In a nutshell, he kept reiterating that nobody wants it in this community, and pretty much disputing every single point administration made and the massive amount of work that they put into this file. They did not just pull this out of a hat, former councillor. They did their homework. But to him, they're all wrong, and he's right. You know, the best part of deputations is that anyone can present to council at any time and say pretty much anything that they want. Whether it's factual or not doesn't matter. It's part of the democracy. But just because you've been there 3 times to make a presentation and, quote, they're not listening to you, it doesn't make the work of administration less valuable. It's important. And just because you've served a bunch of terms on council doesn't make you an expert in social issues, poverty, or addictions, But online, it seems like you are. And in the chambers, this former councillor wanted to make sure he was heard, pretty much launching his campaign for mayor for 2026. Don't be fooled by that. Suggesting administration doesn't have all of the information is simply misguided and lacks any kind of reasoning. But of course, council took the bait and repeated the questions to administration based on this deputation, suggesting that administration got it all wrong. And it was at this time that it was pretty obvious to see who was voting for the temporary village and who wasn't. But hey, we were only in hour 2 at this point. After humoring him for far too long about his findings and his, quote, research, council finally excused him to the gallery. Then the second deputant was Jason Veltri. He spoke to council as just a citizen and gave an impassioned speech on helping people in need and moving forward. In the meantime, the former councilor placed himself perfectly in the background. He could have picked any seat in the gallery because it was empty, but strategically sat behind the deputant's shoulder so that he can smirk, shake his head, and show his frustration with what looks like most of council disagreeing with his findings. And around we went again. Council went on to re-debate success rates of these villages and other markets, and then challenging administration again. Why are we here? After 2 hours of back and forth, the motion finally made it to the floor at 8:45. The question again began to re-debate locations and question administration's tactics, and maybe suggesting that administration is too emotional on the file. We've been here before. We've had all of these conversations. All of the answers are in the reports, and I know this because I read them. What's astonishing to me is that the same councillors deliver these long, impassioned speeches with their opinions on what we need and what we don't need, which is their right and their job to do so. But do they really think that going on and on and on about this for 8 months is going to change anybody's mind around the table? It's not. No one flips votes in these discussions, and especially with this council. So why do it? Well, it's simple. It's to make it look like you're paying attention to the handful of viewers online and on TV. At 8:52 p.m., Councillor Rajni Agarwal suggested that there may be some liabilities with this site and wanted to bring the meeting to a closed session. Because of the liabilities, that's what they needed to do, and away they went to the back room. The feed went down, and into closed session they convened.
There are many parts in the evening, and you'll be very proud of me. I watched most of it.
Good.
Until it was time to go to bed. Anyway, many parts of the evening, I was so confused.
So were they. At 9:54, they came back.
Yeah.
An hour in closed session. It was at this point that the suggestion was made that some things maybe should be removed from the agenda last night due to the time of the meeting. You think? The city manager presented those items that could be removed, including the safety review report, financial principles, animal welfare services, tariffs policies, and more. All of that getting moved to next week. The culture plan stays on the agenda, and so did the notice of motion pertaining to the new library idea. More on that in a second. They accepted that, moved those things off the agenda, and back to the discussion on the temporary village we went for over 4 hours. At 10:55, Councillor Chung put forward a motion to call the question. She had had enough and heard enough of the speeches. That would mean that the discussion would stop immediately and the decision would come forward. That led to some tense and chippy discussion between the chair, Mark Benson, Councillor Chung. He suggested that she was trying to railroad the discussions and take away the people's right to talk about it, to which she took offense, and rightfully so, in my opinion. The motion went on to lose, so the discussions continued. Then came the 11 p.m. resolution. You know, the resolution where they vote to continue after 11 p.m. And breaking news, they all put their hand up this time to continue. All of them. Even you-know-who usually doesn't like to stay past 11. Finally, on to the vote. After 11 p.m. and 5 hours of discussion, the final decision to select Cam River Park as a temporary location after clarification of the motion by the clerk again, and after 8 months of talking about the motion, it was passed. 8 in favor, 5 opposed. It is now carried. The temporary village moves to the next step, which is the council ratification, which is next Monday night. That's where in the city council portion of the meeting, they make the final stamp of approval. And your guess is as good as mine as to what's going to happen on Monday night. But that's the last kick at this file.
So could this once again next week generate more conversation and questions back and forth? Or is this a simple ratification? Let's move on. Cam River Heritage Park, and it's done.
Last night, Danny, they were asking so many questions like this is the first time they've heard about this.
Yeah.
So I have no idea what the answer to that is. God help us if we re-debate this again next week.
Timing is also of the
It
essence,
has
too,
to be
because
approved.
of this funding.
It has to be approved next week, or we risk losing $2.8 million in funding.
Okay.
So that was it. Or was it? Nope. That was just the adjournment of the city committee of the whole meeting. The city council meeting is still to come, where the biggest item was the return of the plan for the library. A notice of motion is when decisions are overturned. Council already made a decision about this. A notice of motion is brought forward if they want to change their mind. They made a decision on this on July 22nd, 2024. It was at that time your council denied the move of the library to the mall for a central location. It was pricey. But Councilors Zeno and Gertuga chose to bring it back again last night and try again with a new library plan. Their plan denied the plan to move to the mall in the first place because of the price tag. But the new plan that came forward this week is costing about $5 million. The idea is to move the library to a central location in the current and potentially soon former location of Sport Check in the mall. 20-something thousand square feet. $5 million. But wait, another twist. Councilor Zeno, whose motion it was to bring forward, offers an idea and puts forward a motion to defer it until next week because, it's getting late. Well, council wanted this over with and so decided to keep it on the agenda and move along. Now, because it's a notice of motion, be reminded that it requires a 2/3 vote or 9 votes to pass and come back to council if it does. So let's break it down. The cost would be covered by a few areas, $1.25 million from the mall. The library will chip in $2 million, and then the city will put in $2.1 million, of which 1.4 was approved back in 2000. It was a late night. 2018. So there's a reserve of $1.4 million for the library that wasn't spent 7 years ago. So the price tag to the city right now, $700,000 from Renew Thunder Bay. But wait. It was now time for the 12 a.m. resolution. You know how this goes. The 12 a.m. resolution is whether or not you get the idea. Breaking news. Unanimous again.
Wow.
All of them said, let's keep going. Councillor Oliver brought forward an interesting point in this discussion. Libraries don't pay taxes. So what are the financial implications to moving to the mall? Meaning, how much will we lose in revenue? Property taxes from the mall, they pay them. But if the library moves in, there's a portion of that mall that doesn't have to pay taxes, right? Administration didn't have an answer on that. The portion of the mall could be considered a municipal asset, and they're going to have to look into it. But it is a reduction of taxes. Councillor Hamilton probably had one of the best speeches of the night, and there was a lot of them. Councillor Hamilton spoke passionately about his love for the library and the services, about how often he uses it and how much he supports the idea for a central location. But he said something last night that no other councillors have the guts to say. He said this: I support this move. I support the price tag of it all, but in good conscience, we need to think about growth. We need to think about things that will get people here, and we have to be very careful with our money. And he made a commitment long time ago to be more fiscally responsible with the money, despite liking an idea does not mean he supports it. So he went on to say that although this is a great idea, this is not the time. Now, because this was a notice of motion, if this was to lose last night, it can't come back in this term of council. So on to the vote. Councillor Trevor Gertuga requested a recorded vote, and off we went. The vote for yes was to move the library to the mall or at least the next stages. No is a no, and it goes away. The vote on the library lost 8-5. Ironically, the same voting total as the temporary village. The meeting was adjourned finally at 12:30 a.m.
What a long night. I honestly thought that this council meeting would wrap up before the election results were announced. or starting to come in at 9:30.
Well, I could tell you based on some really creative camera angles on that meeting last night, much of administration and counselors were watching the results on their phones or
On their
computers.
phones, yeah, I saw.
Of course they are. Well, why wouldn't they be? Yeah. But, I'll wrap up with this because I went way longer than I wanted to. This was another 6-hour meeting. This is the third consecutive meeting that has gone way too long. It really is a testament to this council having a great deal of difficulty making hard decisions. This decision, as I said from the get-go, is going to make a lot of people angry and some people happy. Nobody is going to be completely happy with everything. Nobody wants this in their backyards. Nobody wants this next to their business. Nobody wants it, period. But there are many that want to take care of people and appreciate that this council, this group, voted for a human rights approach to dealing with the homeless population, to supporting those in need. And here we are. This was your idea, your decision, and they had a great deal of trouble saying yes to it. But it moves on, and we see what happens. Construction slated to start in the fall. And then the rest of the 10-point plan, including designated encampment sites, will come forward later in the summer.
And that would be up to 3 of them, right?
That is part of the 10-point plan. That's right.
Okay. There it is. That's your City Council roundup for this morning. John, thank you so much. A long night for all involved. Thanks for your time.
I will warn you in advance. There will be no council roundup next week. There is a meeting on Monday night, but I have better things to do for a change on Monday night.
There's life going on. There's things, absolutely.
That I'm going to go to a musical instead, and I'm going to skip the roundup on
That's
Tuesday.
That's all good.
Unless, of course, odds are that by the time I get home, the meeting is still going on, and I'll pick it up from there.
It might still be going on. All right, Council Roundup. You can find it one of 2 ways. Go to our website, 999thebay.ca. In just a bit, you'll find it there. Or you can text the word council to our T-Bay Tel-Talk and text line 807-344-8229, and you'll get a direct link to the Council Roundup. John, thank you.